Welcome back. So you've got eyes, nose, mouth, ears, probably eyebrows on your face at this point, and you are now ready for the next step, which is adding hair. I'm going to show you a variety of different ways to add hair that will give you a variety of different hairstyles. I'm not going to show you the way to make every hairstyle, but hopefully it's enough information to give you background so you can problem solve to create whatever hairstyle it is that you are looking for. I also want to remind you that all of these videos just show you the ways that making eyes, nose, mouth, and hair and bust work for me and that I've been taught or that I've seen other people do. If you have a way that you'd like to try and experiment with and see what happens, I highly encourage you to. Maybe building hair the way I show you isn't how you think it's going to work best for your piece. Try something different. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no one right answer in art. So experiment and play and see what works best for you. Use my video as a reference to jump off from. Have some fun, my friends. Take your time and don't worry about this being perfect yet because we have got another step to do before we perfect the hair.
Your first step in prepping for hair is defining the hairline. And my forehead right now is a little too short for hair, so I'm going to add some clay to this top section first.
At this point, I'm really only concerned about the shape and the height of the forehead. The rest of the head shape can change as I add the hair.
Once we built that forehead up to a good angle, our next step, no matter what hairstyle we're putting on, is we want to define a hairline. Typically the hairline is going to run straight across the forehead, then it's going to turn and come down into the temple and around the ear. Wanted to have a little bit of a widow's peak there. I'm turning the corner and coming down along the forehead into the sideburn, around the ear. Then it turns and angles back into the lower neck, straight across the lower neck, and then just in reverse in the other direction. The other thing you're going to want to do is kind of figure out where you want the part on your person. I'm going to have mine kind of off to the side. So I'm going to do the part down the length of the head, and then I'm going to stop kind of middle back here. This is where hair is going to grow in different directions. On the back side of the head, all the hair is going to be growing down in this direction. And then as we turn, it grows down towards the side and away from that part. And that is why we define the part and we define the hairline so we know where to start and stop adding our hair. At this point, I can move forward with any of the techniques that I'd like on adding hair. The first one I'm going to show you is how to add short hair. So for shorter hair, I'm going to use coils, little coils. I don't spend too much time on it. I'm going to score and slip every time I add these. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to attach them because all of this is going to come off eventually. So I put small pieces of hair down and I'm going to blend those pieces of hair up into the head. And I'm just going to follow that hairline all the way around. And I always start on the bottom, no matter the style of hair that I'm doing, and I work up towards the top.
In real life, make sure you slip and score.
Once I've built a row up all the way around, I'm going to come in with my favorite tool for this project, this guy. And I'm just going to break down those coils a little bit so they look less like coils and more like hair. This also kind of pushes things into the head a little bit.
Break down the coils by adding marks that flow in the direction of the hair.
Once I've gone through that line, I'm going to apply the next line and keep moving up. Notice I've got about an inch between each line. Once I've got a line on, I would come back in with my tool and I'd break things up, making sure that I'm keeping some definition between my layers so I can get this sense that the hair is overlapping and growing in different lengths from different sections. And I would keep building that up into the top. And so you can already tell, like if I was going for a bald man, this hairdo is working well, right? When I get to the top of the head and I'm adding those layers, I really want to be careful about how I'm adding things and thinking about hairstyles. You know, is this kind of growing down into the face? Is it growing back? And I'm always working up towards that part. So I would keep working in that direction.
Do you see how easily this pulls off? That is why it is so important that you slip and score when you add the hair to this dried up old head.
Next hairstyle I'm going to talk with you about is if you're going to do a ponytail. If you're going to do a ponytail, you want to mark where the hairline is, and then you're going to mark where the ponytail or bun would go. And you're going to make thick, heavy coils. You're going to score and you're going to slip. You're going to start the coil at the hairline, and then you're going to pull it back into where that ponytail goes, all the way around the head.
Again, if I was doing this for keeps, I would be scoring and slipping with each coil that I add. Once your coils are added, you're going to go in and break up the coils just like we did with the shorter hair. You're going to go in line with the coils towards the ponytail, and you want to thin out the hair where it meets the forehead and the neck so it looks like it's growing out of the head.
So at this point you can see from the side kind of how that would look. I would finish the other side obviously. And then if you're putting in a ponytail or a large piece on the top of the head, my recommendation is to stop here, and then you're going to go to the next step, which is hollowing out the head before you add the ponytail. So let's pretend that we've hollowed out the head and it's time to add the ponytail. At this point you would come in, you would make a ponytail shape with a big old piece of clay, and you're going to just focus on like the basic shape of the ponytail. Skinnier at its base. And then once you get that basic form in there, then you can start to go in and break down the form to give it the impression that there is hair there. And also remember, we're working with clay. Let it look like clay. It's okay if it's a little chunky. We're not going for tiny little perfect hair. Or maybe you are, in which case, take more time. Build smaller pieces in. And I always start with chunkier hair, and then as my hair sets up, I'll go in and I'll modify it a little bit more. Okay, there's my ponytail. My next step at this point would be I'd probably thin it out a little bit here at the base, and then I'm going to use some clay to kind of create a band at the base of the ponytail. I'd add, if this was a braid, I'd add the braid here as well. Speaking of braids, if I'm going to do a braid, I'll make 3 coils of clay, keep them rough, and then I'll braid them like it was actually hair. This is a pretty thick braid. Pinch it together at the bottom. Okay, this is where I would put like a hair tie. Then I would attach that to the head. Once that's attached, I'm going to go in just like I have with everything else, and I'm going to break it up so you can see the direction and the flow of the hair. You just want to make sure that you can see those overlaps between the sections of the braid. When you're breaking it up, don't lose those overlaps. And if you do, carve them back in.
When doing something like the braid or the ponytail, you really want to save this step for after you've hollowed out the head. And adding things that look like rubber bands around the bases is also a good idea.
And that's what a braid would look like.
Again, this here is why you want to slip and score when you do this for real.
If I was doing a braid from a center part, like I've split the head in two and I'm doing a braid over here and a braid over here, I'd build my coils over from the center to the point where the braid starts.
I bet you know what I'm going to say. Make sure you're slipping and scoring if you're doing this.
And then I would attach the braid here, coming around the shoulder, and then try to show the different sections of the braid kind of feeding into the hair around it. So I'd connect this one back up here, like so. And obviously there would be hair up in front of this as well that's coming back into the braid. But you can see how that works. Here's a piece that I used slab construction for the hair. So I rolled slab and then I cut sections out, and you can kind of see the shape of the sections I cut for the hair. I applied the slab from the bottom up, just like we did with all the rest of our pieces, and then applied texture to each slab. Here you can see some of the overlaps, piece that I broke on accident, whoops. All the way around. Here on the base, there's a larger slab that was applied, and as we come around to the front, the slabs grew smaller and a little bit more refined in their shape. So that's another technique that you can use if you don't like the coil method. Here is one done with coils as well, and you can see this is the refining step. It's been cut open, and then I've gone in when the clay was drier and refined it so it's not quite as chunky. Here you can see the braid in the back that turns into the branch, and where those braids overlapped, I made sure to try to show the separation between sections, and those sections are really important when working with hair. I also refined the part. But again, this all happens after we cut things open. Those are finishing touches and finishing steps. First, we got to get the base form of the clay on.
Here I am working on my piece, and I am adding the hair that is going to stay on her this time. So I am, you've got it, slipping and scoring. I'm doing a longer style of hair, so I'm using longer coils. I'm starting at the bottom just like with any technique with hair, and I'm layering as I go up. Every time I add a new row of hair, I'm going to go back in with my tool and kind of break the hair down in the flow of the hair itself. You'll also notice that every time I do a layer of hair, I don't always fill in the entire space. I kind of space things out and blend things out until it seems to make sense. I really like to work by adding the hair in chunks that overlap and flow over each other in interesting ways, as hair does naturally. I don't want it to all flow perfectly. Make sure that when you add that hair that you're really taking the time to blend it in and make sure that it's well attached to the head. It's going to take some time to get this to a finished state, and that's okay. You just want to start getting the basic shapes and volumes on at this point in the process. As I go through this, I'll also notice areas where I might need to add more clay or take clay away and really finish the piece. The last section I always add is the bangs or the hair in the front. That way I can finish it off in a way that I think looks nicest with the figure and the form.
Here's the finished hair. I've gone in and added some volume where there were gaps and holes. I've blended everything in, especially those tips onto the drier areas of my piece, and tried to get the basic shape that I would like. My next step is to cut open my sculpture and scoop out the inside so it's all the right thickness. So I don't want to go any further than this with the hair. I don't want to refine any more than what I have. And honestly, I kind of like how it is right now anyways. The roughness of the hair against the smoothness of the skin is kind of an interesting texture. Take your time building that hair up no matter what route you do. Make sure that you use slip and score every time you apply a new row. Start from the bottom and work your way up and to the front, and just take your time and have some fun along the way.